Welcome in. This is episode 3 of the Saturday Whistle. I'm Freddie Grant, and today we're not just recapping a season, we're unpacking what it revealed. 4 programs, 4 head coaches, 4 very different kinds of pressure. Some tried to sustain success, some chased ceilings, some quietly built momentum, and one walked into an off-season controversy that reshaped how its future would be viewed before the next season even kicked off. This is the 2034 season, in full, and what it set up for 2035. Let's get into team overviews. Coastal Carolina finished 7-6, and the season became a stress test for sustainability. After the prior year's second consecutive double-digit win breakthrough, expectations arrived fast, and with them, scrutiny in every close loss. Cody Backus in his third year still had a clear identity in place. Quarterback Naboif wasn't flashy, but he was functional. 2,203 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, plus 431 rushing yards that repeatedly saved drives. But the season revolved around running back Hasty. 1,056 rushing yards, 14 rushing touchdowns, 62 receptions. That wasn't balance. That was necessity. Coastal's entire plan to shorten games and stay competitive ran through him. The passing game contributed but never truly took over. Defensively, Coastal competed but lacked finishing plays, no defensive touchdowns, and that absence defined a season of narrow losses. Moving on to Texas A&M. Texas A&M finished 8-5 in what was Patrick Salt's first season there following his firing from Tulane, and the year reflected both transition and upside. Salt arrived with something to prove and leaned hard into aggression. Quarterback Rattay threw for 2,886 yards and 26 touchdowns, but also 20 interceptions. That volatility defined the season. When it worked, A&M looked dangerous. When it didn't, games flipped fast. The stabilizer was running back Castro. When A&M slowed down and featured him, the offense found rhythm. He erased matchups, steadied momentum, and prevented games from spiraling completely. Defensively, A&M created pressure and turnovers, but they didn't finish drives with points. That forced the offense to stay perfect far too often and kept several games uncomfortably close. Now to Northwestern. Northwestern finished 6-7, but the record undersold how uncomfortable they were to play. Under Casey Reppel, the Wildcats became aggressive and disruptive. The 6-7 record is still an improvement over prior year, and the school is seeing the momentum and success potential that Reppel brings. Quarterback Flores threw for 2,894 yards and 30 touchdowns, while receiver Cummins emerged as a star with over 1,000 yards and 12 scores. But the defense told the real story. 33 sacks, 10 interceptions, 2 defensive touchdowns. They didn't just compete, they flipped games. The defense looks to continue this high-level performance going into the 2035 season. Northwestern rarely dominated, but they consistently disrupted. That identity gave them credibility beyond the win-loss record. Vanderbilt finished 6-7, and no season in this group carried more complexity. On the field, toughness improved. Defensively, Vanderbilt created short fields and momentum swings, but the offseason brought a reckoning. Before the 2035 season began, an investigation concluded that Buddy Kaplan had turned a blind eye to PED usage within the program. He did not administer or encourage use, but failed to enforce or report violations. The punishment was significant and forward-facing. A 6-game suspension to begin the 2035 season, no recruiting contact during that period, and a public reprimand. Kaplan addressed it directly, saying, "I want to apologize to our family, our fans, and this university for my part in what happened. I take responsibility. I will learn from it, and I will come back better. I have complete faith we can bring Vanderbilt to the promised land." That apology framed Vanderbilt's entire offseason, not as damage control for the past, but as accountability heading into the future. Up next is our 2034 standout players from the season. This wasn't just about box scores, it was about who forced defenses to change. Coming in at number 1, Cummins at Northwestern was unavoidable. Defenses knew the ball was coming and still couldn't stop it. Over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns on a team fighting uphill weekly. Number 2 was Hasty at Coastal wasn't featured. He was relied upon. Late drives, shortened games, survival football, he was the answer. I have number 3 as Castro at Texas. A&M erased matchups. Linebackers couldn't cover him. Safeties couldn't tackle him in space. When games tilted, he steadied them, and at quarterback it was a coin flip. Flores and Rattay represented two sides of the same coin. Flores embraced risk to keep Northwestern alive. Rattay embraced aggression to push A&M's ceiling. Both swung games, for better and worse. Our next segment, we're going to cover the power rankings of our 4 featured teams. When stacking these teams, power rankings stopped being about records and became about confidence, about who you trusted on a neutral field tomorrow. Texas A&M sat at number 1, not because they were the cleanest team, but because their ceiling was undeniable. When they were right offensively, no one in this group could keep pace. Coastal came in second because even in regression, they never fractured. They didn't lose identity. They stayed competitive, and that stability mattered. Northwestern landed third because disruption travels. Sacks, turnovers, defensive touchdowns, those things don't disappear against better opponents. Vanderbilt finished fourth. Progress was real, but they survived more than they controlled. Let's talk coaching hot seat and where I see our spotlight coaches currently heading into 2035. This wasn't panic. It was pressure. Cody Backus was safe, but Coastal now expected consistency, not flashes. Sustaining success mattered more than chasing it. 2035, he comes in safe, but has to get over the hump and prove they can hang with the power schools. The joining of the American Conference could prove to be successful or completely disastrous. Backus is safe for now. Patrick Saul entered 2035 warm. 8 wins bought time, but volatility wears thin at a place like A&M. In year 2, improvement is necessary, and managing his team's turnover ratio is critical. 8-5 was good, but at a program like Texas A&M, not good enough. Casey Rappel is firmly safe, but his tone changed. He openly and publicly voiced frustration about limitations, about grinding uphill without enough support, about needing real investment if Northwestern was serious about winning. And then he backed it up by landing the 11th ranked recruiting class in the country and proving what he can do with little resources. His advocacy for more remains, and the program is rallying behind him. That wasn't quiet advocacy. That was a coach putting pressure on the institution to match his results. Buddy Kaplan survived, but under scrutiny. Improvement mattered. Accountability would define the start of 2035. With the 6-game suspension, his job security lands in the hands of his interim offensive coordinator, Ashton Harper. If Harper can hold off the Dogs until his return, Kaplan may just come out of this with minor scratches. If not, he may be on another job hunt. Something that's becoming all too common for Buddy. A new segment for this episode is coordinators and off-season fallout. This is where seasons quietly turn. Not on Saturdays, but in meeting rooms, offices, and off-season decisions that don't always make headlines. At Coastal Carolina, the firing of offensive coordinator Bill Stevens was an admission. Not panic, honesty. The identity was there, but the execution wasn't consistent enough, and after a season full of close losses, Coastal needed more than toughness. And when Hasty transferred after the season, that urgency doubled. Coastal didn't just lose production, they lost the centerpiece that allowed them to shorten games and survive mistakes. The offseason became about redefining who they are when the margin isn't protected. At Texas A&M, retaining defensive coordinator Ronnie Burns wasn't an endorsement, it was a challenge. The defense flashed disruption, but too often failed to close drives. Internally, the message was clear. Improvement wasn't optional anymore. In year 2 under Patrick Saul, the defensive side would either stabilize or become the pressure point that defines the staff. At Northwestern, continuity sent a very specific signal. The administration believed the formula was working. Disruption on defense, aggression on offense, and momentum on the recruiting trail. Keeping the staff intact wasn't about comfort, it was about alignment. Expectations rose because belief did. And at Vanderbilt, the offseason carried a looming consequence. Buddy Kaplan's suspension, 6 games to begin the 2035 season, hadn't been served yet, but it shaped everything. Planning, leadership delegation, and early season preparation all happened with the knowledge that the head coach would be absent when the new season kicked off. For a program with thin margins, that reality defined the offseason tone before a single snap of 2035 was played. Wrapping up episode 3, let's talk 2035 outlook and predictions. So what will 2034 actually set up? Not answers. Expectations. For Coastal Carolina, I expect a rebound to 8-4, but it won't be automatic. The culture survived a step back, and that matters. But 2035 will ask a harder question. Is the identity portable without Hasty? Can Coastal win games without shortening them, without leaning on one player to erase mistakes? Growth, not grit, will be the test. For Texas A&M, I project 9-3, but with restraint as a separator. The offense won't need to change, the decision-making will. Year 2 under Patrick Saw won't be about dialing back aggression, but choosing when to deploy it. If volatility shrinks, A&M's ceiling becomes sustainable instead of theoretical. For Northwestern, I have 7-5, but louder than the record. This will be the team most likely to surprise people. Defensive disruption should travel again. Recruiting momentum will matter. And Casey Rappel's willingness to publicly call out limitations and demand resources could become the catalyst that pushes the program forward. Programs tend to turn corners when coaches stop pretending the climb is easy and start insisting on support. And for Vanderbilt, I project 6-6. Bowl eligible, competitive, but fragile. The culture should continue to improve, but the first half of the season will be shaped by Buddy Kaplan's absence as he serves his suspension. Early survival will matter just as much as growth, and trust will still be in the process of being rebuilt. That's episode 3 of the Saturday Whistle. I'm Freddie Grant, and this was the 2034 season in full, the wins, the pressure, the fallout, and the road ahead. Because in college football, last season explains everything and guarantees nothing.